Have you ever returned home to find someone building an entire neighborhood on your property? That's exactly what happened when I came back to my grandfather's 200-acre farm and discovered bulldozers tearing up land that had been in my family for generations. I'm Michael Harrington, mid-50s, a guy who's clawed his way to a comfy life in business but still gets a lump in his throat thinking about the farm my granddad left me. That 200-acre slice of Meadow Creek is more than dirt, it's where I learned to drive a tractor, sneak my first beer, and bury my childhood dog. So, when I got a call saying it's being turned into some yuppie suburb, I damn near choked on my coffee. It's 6 a.m. in my city apartment, the kind of place where the neighbors complain if your dog farts too loud. I'm half awake, coffee mug steaming on the kitchen counter, staring at a photo of Granddad on the wall, him in his straw hat, grinning like he's got a secret. My suitcase is tucked in the closet, still smelling of airport baggage claims. Then the phone rings, and it's Mrs. Thompson, Granddad's 80-something neighbor who's sharper than most guys my age. "Michael, they're tearing up your land," she hollers, voice shaking like she's seen a ghost. Construction crews, big machines, houses, almost 100 of them. I laugh it off at first, thinking it's some neighbor's shed crossing the property line. But when she says, 100 houses, my stomach drops like I just bet my 401k on a bad stock. This ain't no fence dispute, this is war. By noon, I'm barreling down the dusty roads to Meadow Creek in my SUV, overnight bag tossed in the back, laptop riding shotgun, and Granddad's deed in a folder I dug out of my desk. Rural Meadow Creek's the kind of place where the diner's gossip is the only news, and the gas station sells worms. But as I near the farm, my jaw hits the floor. My eastern fields, where I used to hunt rabbits with a slingshot, are a freaking construction zone. Bulldozers roar, foundation holes scar the earth, and tacky signs scream, Sunny Pines Luxury Community. Luxury? Looks like a strip mall had a baby with a golf course. I storm into the construction site's office, a fancy trailer with a Westview HOA logo that might as well say, "We steal your land." Inside, Jessica Mills, their executive director, is waiting like a spider in a web. She's late 40s, with hair so perfect it's probably insured and a condescending smile that makes you want to punch a wall. She's clutching a tablet with survey maps, and the walls are covered in construction plans that scream, "Screw you," to my family's legacy. "Mr. Harrington," she says, voice dripping with fake sympathy, "this land was classified as abandoned property." She slides her tablet over, showing some county record that's faker than a politician's promise. "We've got full approval." I tell her I've paid taxes on this land every damn year, but she just smirks. "Our team of 15 attorneys has reviewed everything. Perhaps you'd like to speak with them." 15 lawyers. That's not a legal team, that's a Shark Tank. I'm fuming, but she's already turning away, her designer heels clicking like she owns the place. I step outside, watching a crane rip into my granddad's fields, feeling like I just got kicked in the nuts by a mule. Jessica's back in her air-conditioned trailer, probably popping champagne, while I'm out here, fists balled, wondering how the hell I'm gonna fight an HOA with a lawyer army. Little does she know, my great-grandfather wasn't just a farmer, he was a legal ninja who set a trap 100 years ago that's about to make these land grabbers cry. Where are you watching this from today? Leave it in the comments below because you're about to witness justice that was literally 100 years in the making. My great-grandfather wasn't just a farmer, he was a legal genius who anticipated greedy developers might try to steal our land someday. While Jessica Mills and her HOA cronies thought they'd pulled off the heist of the century, I was about to uncover a bombshell buried in a century-old deed that'd make their smug faces drop faster than their stock prices. I needed answers, and the local diner was the best place to start. The Meadow Creek Diner's the kind of joint where the coffee's strong enough to wake a coma patient and the gossip's thicker than the gravy. I slid into a booth across from Mr. Grayson, another of Granddad's old neighbors, who's got a handshake like a vice and stories longer than a tax code. 2 coffee cups steamed between us as I scribbled notes in a beat-up notebook. Grayson leaned in, his voice low like he was spilling state secrets. "This ain't Westview's first rodeo, Mike," he said. They've been bullying folks around here for years, slapping old-timers with fake fines, trumped-up violations, anything to scare them into selling cheap. He listed a dozen elderly locals who'd been strong-armed into giving up their land for pennies. Westview wasn't just building on my farm, they were running a predatory land grab disguised as a homeowners association. My blood boiled, but I kept writing, every word fuel for the fight. Next stop was the county assessor's office, followed by the courthouse records department. If you've ever waded through government bureaucracy, you know it's like trying to herd cats in a rainstorm. For 3 days, I hauled my laptop and a legal pad everywhere, jotting notes while dodging paper-pushing clerks who acted like I was asking for their firstborn. I recorded every conversation on my phone, building a paper trail as long as a CVS receipt. What I found made my fists clench. Westview had falsified documents to claim my land was abandoned, forging signatures and backdating records like they were scripting a bad crime flick. Jessica's 15 attorneys weren't just defending her, they were covering up fraud. I was outgunned, but I wasn't outsmarted. Not yet. Back at Granddad's farmhouse, I needed a breather. The living room smelled of old wood and memories, with an oak chest in the corner that held family relics. I cracked it open, finding yellowed photos, Granddad's reading glasses, and the original deed in a plastic sleeve, its edges brittle as my patience. I poured a whiskey, sat cross-legged on the floor, and started reading the deed's dense legal gibberish. My eyes glazed over legalese like hereditaments and appurtenances, but then I hit a paragraph that made me choke on my drink. Tucked in the fine print was a provision from my great-grandfather: should any person or entity construct improvements upon this land without express written consent of the deed holder or rightful heir, said improvements shall immediately and irrevocably become the sole property of the land's rightful owner. I read it again, then a third time, my heart pounding like I'd just won the lottery. This wasn't just a clause, it was a legal landmine, and Westview had built 120 houses right on top of it. I needed to know if this was real or some old-timey bluff. Enter Thomas Green, a local attorney whose office looked like a law library exploded. Shelves groaned with leather-bound books, and his desk was a war zone of legal pads and coffee cups. I laid the deed on his desk, pointing to the provision like it was the Holy Grail. Thomas, pushing 70 with a twinkle in his eye that screamed, "I love screwing over bad guys," leaned back and read it slowly. "Well, I'll be damned," he said, a grin spreading. "This is airtight. Properly recorded, never contested. Every nail they've hammered, every brick they've laid, it's all yours the second it's built." I blinked, waiting for the catch. There wasn't one. Thomas chuckled, swirling his coffee. "You could tell him to stop right now, or you could wait. The more they build, the more they lose." I drove back to the farmhouse, my mind racing faster than a V8 engine. Stop them now. Nah. Jessica and her HOA vultures thought they'd outsmarted a city boy with their fake documents and lawyer brigade. But my great-grandfather, that sly old fox, had outplayed them from the grave. Every house they built was another dollar in my pocket and another nail in their coffin. I pictured Jessica's smug smile melting when she realized she'd handed me a $60 million neighborhood on a silver platter. This wasn't just about saving my land anymore, it was about making Westview beg for mercy. I cracked open another whiskey, staring out at the bulldozers in the distance. The sun was setting, painting the sky blood-red over my fields. Thomas's words echoed, "The more they build, the more they lose." I raised my glass to Granddad's photo on the wall. "You crafty bastard," I muttered. "This one's for you." Sometimes revenge isn't about acting quickly, it's about letting your enemies dig their own graves deeper and deeper. With my great-grandfather's legal landmine locked and loaded, I wasn't about to tip my hand to Jessica Mills and her HOA jackhauls. Every house they slapped together on my land was another brick in the empire they were unwittingly building for me. All I had to do was sit back, watch, and let their greed do the heavy lifting. I turned into a one-man surveillance operation, staking out my own property like a deer hunter waiting for the perfect shot. From the perimeter of my 200 acres, I parked my truck in spots hidden by old oaks or tucked behind hills, binoculars glued to my face. My camera, fitted with a telephoto lens, snapped shots of every new foundation, every framed wall, every tacky, Sunny Pines sign. I kept a notebook in the glove box, jotting down dates, equipment counts, and worker numbers, each entry a tally in the case I was building. To Westview, I was just a washed-up city guy who'd slunk away after Jessica's lawyer threat. Good. Let them think they'd won. The longer they believed I was licking my wounds, the more they'd pour into their doomed project. My next move was intel gathering at the Lion's Den itself, a Sunny Pines HOA community meeting. The clubhouse was a gaudy shrine to suburban excess, with chandeliers that screamed, "We overcharged for this." I slipped in as a concerned citizen, taking a seat in the back row, baseball cap pulled low. Jessica stood at the front, her tablet glowing with sales figures, a projector flashing blueprints of cookie-cutter mansions. She was in her element, tossing her perfectly styled hair as she bragged about the development's progress. "We've got 120 homes planned, priced between $450,000 and $750,000, she crowed, pausing for applause from the suits and prospective buyers. With projected profits exceeding $60 million, Sunny Pines is Westview's crown jewel. I scribbled notes, my poker face hiding the fact that I was mentally high-fiving my great-grandfather. $60 million, and every penny was about to be mine. Back at Thomas Green's law office, we turned his conference room into a war room. Documents sprawled across the table, the original deed, my surveillance photos, county records exposing Westview's forged, abandoned property claims, and legal briefs Thomas was drafting with the precision of a sniper. The deed's provision, all improvements belong to the land's owner, sat at the center, our ace in the hole. Thomas, sipping coffee like it was his lifeblood, cross-referenced every detail, confirming the provision's legality was ironclad. We dug deeper, pulling records of Westview's other shady deals, fines, violations, and coerced sales that mirrored Mr. Grayson's stories from the diner. This wasn't just about my land, Westview was a predator, and we were building a case to gut them. The waiting game was the hardest part. I'd rented a small house on a hill overlooking the construction, close enough to smell the fresh concrete but far enough to stay off Westview's radar. A calendar on the wall marked construction milestones, 30 homes framed, 50 roofs up, 80 foundations poured. Binoculars sat on the windowsill, my constant companion as I watched the site buzz like a kicked anthill. Legal documents filled a briefcase under my bed, ready for the day we'd spring the trap. Every morning, I'd sip coffee and toast to Granddad's foresight, knowing each new house was another middle finger to Jessica's smug grin. Patience wasn't just a virtue, it was a weapon, and I was sharpening it daily. As the 100th home neared completion, my phone buzzed with Thomas's number. I answered, expecting another update, but his voice had a gleeful edge. "It's time, Mike," he said. "They've finished the model homes and sold 85 pre-construction contracts. The trap's ready to spring." I leaned back, staring out my rental's window at the sprawl of Sunny Pines, its rooftops glinting in the dusk. Jessica thought she was building a legacy. Instead, she built my empire. The thought of her face when we dropped the hammer. Worth every second of waiting. I poured a whiskey, raising my glass to the fields my great-grandfather had protected with a pen sharper than any sword. The bulldozers were still out there, oblivious to the legal guillotine hanging over them. Tomorrow, we'd start the endgame. For now, I savored the quiet before the storm, knowing Westview's $60 million dream was about to become their waking nightmare. Jessica thought she was hosting a celebration. Instead, she was attending her own professional funeral. The Sunny Pines grand opening was Westview HOA's big moment to preen, and I was ready to crash their party with a century-old legal sledgehammer. My great-grandfather's deed provision had turned their 120-house development into my personal jackpot, and today was the day I'd rip the rug out from under them. The grand opening was a circus of self-congratulation. Balloons bobbed in the breeze, champagne flutes clinked, and a ribbon stretched across the entrance to the model homes, begging for a ceremonial snip. A podium bore the Westview logo, surrounded by sales brochures and a display of shiny model home keys that screamed, "Buy now, regret later." Jessica, in a designer suit sharper than her tongue, beamed as she took the stage, her perfectly styled hair catching the sunlight. "Welcome to Sunny Pines, Westview's newest luxury development," she declared, her voice dripping with smug triumph. "This community represents vision, progress, and unparalleled opportunity." The crowd, suits, buyers, and local bigwigs, ate it up, clapping like trained seals. I stood in the back, leather portfolio under my arm, the original deed safe in a protective sleeve, my face a mask of calm while my pulse thumped like a war drum. The Q&A session was my cue. As Jessica fielded softballs about square footage and HOA fees, I stepped to the microphone, feeling every eye swivel my way. "Michael Harrington," I said, voice steady as granite. "The rightful owner of this land." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Jessica's smile froze, her eyes narrowing like a cat spotting a dog. I held up the deed, its yellowed edges visible even from the stage. "Your development's built on my property, and thanks to a provision in this deed from 1925, every single structure here, 120 homes, clubhouse, all of it, legally belongs to me." I read the clause aloud, slow and deliberate. "Should any person or entity construct improvements upon this land without express written consent, said improvements shall immediately become the sole property of the land's rightful owner." The crowd went silent, jaws dropping like they'd just seen a UFO. Jessica's face drained of color, her tablet slipping slightly in her hands. "That's preposterous," she stammered, but her voice cracked, and I knew I'd landed a direct hit. Chaos erupted in Westview's offices hours later. Their emergency meeting was a clown show of panic, held in a conference room where my legal documents, now spread across the table like a buffet of bad news, spelled their doom. Jessica's tablet buzzed with frantic messages from corporate, her composure unraveling as executives and lawyers scrambled for a lifeline. Thomas Green, cool as a winter morning, sat across from them, his coffee cup steaming like his quiet confidence. "The provision was recorded with the original deed," he said, sliding copies of county records their way. "It's binding, airtight, and uncontestable. You built on Mr. Harrington's land without consent. You've got no claim." The lead attorney, a sweaty guy with a tie looser than his arguments, stammered about adverse possession and clerical errors, but Thomas shut him down with a smile. "You forged documents to steal his land. That's not a defense, it's a confession." Jessica stared at the table, her designer heels no help now. The room felt like a sinking ship, and I was the guy who'd just blown the hole. By evening, the story hit the airwaves like a wildfire. Local news crews swarmed me outside the clubhouse, cameras rolling, microphones shoved in my face. I held up the deed provision, letting the reporters snap photos as I laid out Westview's fraud and my great-grandfather's genius. "They thought they could bully me out of my family's land," I said, "but they built me a $60 million neighborhood instead." The story went viral by morning, headlines screaming HOA horror and landowner's revenge. Social media lit up with memes of Jessica's shocked face, while homebuyers who'd signed pre-construction contracts flooded Westview's phone lines, demanding refunds. Their stock tanked 30% in a day, and word came that Jessica was on administrative leave, corporate's polite way of saying, "Pack your bags." Then came the settlement offer. Westview's CEO, a guy who looked like he'd rather be golfing, called me personally, voice slick as an oil spill. "Mr. Harrington, we're prepared to offer $20 million to resolve this amicably." I leaned back in my rental house, binoculars still on the windowsill, and laughed. "I'm not interested in your money," I said, savoring every word. "I'm interested in justice." I hung up, picturing their boardroom melting down. 20 million. Chump change. They'd built me a $60 million empire, and I wasn't settling for pocket lint. Jessica and her 15 lawyers had walked into my great-grandfather's trap, and now they were choking on it. The best part? We weren't done yet. They thought they were stealing my land. Instead, they built me a $60 million neighborhood. Westview HOA's grand opening had turned into their public execution, with my great-grandfather's legal trap snapping shut like a bear claw. Jessica Mills and her corporate vultures were reeling, and I was ready to twist the knife, turning their greed into a legacy of justice that'd make Granddad proud. The courtroom was the final battlefield. In the county courthouse, the judge's chambers felt like a lion's den, with legal briefs stacked like ammunition and the original deed sitting front and center, its yellowed pages a silent witness to Westview's downfall. The court reporter's equipment clicked away as Thomas Green laid out our case, his voice steady as he dissected Westview's fraud, forged documents, fake, abandoned property, claims, and a pattern of predatory land grabs. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who looked like she'd seen every scam in the book, leaned forward when Thomas read the deed's provision: all improvements belong to the land's rightful owner. Westview's lawyers, a sweaty pack of suits, tried to spin tales of clerical errors and good faith, but the judge wasn't buying it. The provision is clear, recorded, and binding, she ruled, her gavel slamming like a thunderclap. Every structure on Mr. Harrington's land, 120 homes, clubhouse, infrastructure, is his property, effective immediately. I caught Thomas's eye, his grin saying what we both knew: we just won a $60 million checkmate. Jessica's fall was as swift as it was brutal. At Westview's corporate headquarters, she was summoned to a boardroom that reeked of desperation. Her personal items, designer pens, framed awards, were already in a cardboard box, a security escort looming like a bouncer at a dive bar. The CEO, dodging the fallout, pinned the $60 million disaster on her, citing gross mismanagement. Jessica, once the untouchable queen of Sunny Pines, was fired on the spot, her name radioactive as whispers of criminal charges for document fraud swirled. She'd been the face of Westview's greed, and now she was their scapegoat, left to slink away while the company's stock bled out. I didn't shed a tear, her smug smile had earned her this cardboard box walk of shame. With the legal win secured, I turned to the community itself, now mine in every sense. Sunny Pines was dead, I renamed it Harrington Meadows, a nod to the family legacy Westview tried to erase. The new sign went up at the entrance, bold letters gleaming, and I hung Granddad's photo in the clubhouse, his straw hat grin watching over the place. The 120 homes were a mix of model units and pre-sold contracts, and I wasn't about to punish innocent buyers who'd been duped by Westview's lies. I offered fair deals, affordable buy-ins for those who wanted to stay, with clear titles and no HOA nonsense. The profits, easily topping $60 million, gave me options. I funneled a chunk into a legal fund for other victims of predatory HOAs, a war chest to fight the kind of fraud Westview had spread like a virus. The eastern fields, scarred by construction, got a second life as community gardens named after Granddad, with raised beds and fruit trees where kids now played instead of bulldozers. Harrington Meadows wasn't just a neighborhood, it was a middle finger to every land-grabbing suit who thought they could bully their way to a payday. The final moment came on the porch of Granddad's farmhouse, where I sat in a rocking chair, lemonade sweating in my hand. A framed copy of the deed's provision hung on the wall behind me, a trophy of justice served cold. The sun dipped low, casting gold over Harrington Meadows, its rooftops a testament to Westview's folly. I thought about my great-grandfather, a farmer with the foresight of a chess grandmaster, planting a legal seed that bloomed a century later. Justice, I realized, sometimes takes generations, but when it hits, it's sweeter than any whiskey. Jessica was gone, Westview was crippled, and I'd turned their $60 million gamble into a legacy that'd outlast us all. If you enjoyed watching justice served cold to a predatory HOA, smash that like button, share this story with anyone dealing with HOA nightmares, subscribe for more tales of everyday justice, and hit that bell so you never miss an update. Drop your own HOA horror stories in the comments below, I read every single one.